Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about
sex,
love,
magic,
desire,
purpose,
bliss,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves. So we started talking about the portal to bliss.
The door, the window, the whatever.
So you were speaking about it, and I was listening more than anything.
And I'm really
else.
sorry for the previous episode's monologue.
I'm pretty sure this one will be the same. But my question
I hope
is...
not.
But then
Those
what happens?
aren't fun.
But what happens after we enter the portal? Like, what can we expect once we cross the threshold?
So it could take up to a week. So it's funny. So apparently, according to the previous episode, the portal stays open 48 hours.
Yes.
So
which, by the way, there was a question I wanted to ask. If you don't walk through it, if you don't walk through it within 48 hours, does it close again and you didn't do it?
Yes.
But how do you know if you've walked through it once you've opened the portal?
You'll know. You'll there's a perceptible shift.
Okay, so...
But there's no reason you wouldn't be able to, really. Once it's there, it's there.
But so you're, over that 48 hours, you're like shifting and changing yourself, and then you're also most likely going to walk through it because, like anything else, like you will follow your divine path or whatever. You've made the choice when you made the summoning.
I really wish that people listening could see the eye roll that went along with that.
Okay, but after the summoning, and you've walked through it...
Which could take about up to a week to fully cross that threshold. Because again, that energy compatibility takes time given where we're coming from, as far as we've had to travel to get there. Because we're so dense that adjusting to that energy takes time. So the door closes, so we're in it enough, but we haven't fully crossed in.
And so what happens in this crossing period?
Okay, you're going to expect three things. The first is that you feel energized. It's a really nice thing. You're just going to experience such an energy surge with all that power coursing through you that you just, you'll go from slow and easy to fast and strong pretty quickly.
Okay.
You just get this
over the week or just pretty quickly?
Pretty quickly, not over the week. And it might even be that you just get sexually energized.
Okay.
It would help to have a core relationship because you want to do it all the time.
Okay.
And the second is to see, you'll be able to see a lot of your future from your fate as you process what you might be skipping to get where you are. So it's interesting. How we said, you'll have lived a good portion of your fate, but there also might be pieces that you see that you end up skipping because you're like, this isn't going to serve me anymore. This isn't going to serve me anymore. I don't really need this experience because I've gotten this. Again, you've just eliminated a lot of the unnecessary bits. But you might end up seeing it and playing through it in your mind, which is why some things become very clear, almost obvious, and you think, oh, that's my next step. But it's not. And the third is you're just going to be wide awake. Entering the portal, it offers such a heightened sensation that readies you for that bliss state. Eventually, that heightened awareness becomes normalized. As you say, experience makes normal. But you'll almost be aware of it the whole time. Even though it becomes normalized, you're going to understand and realize that where you're at is where a lot of other people are not. When you're post-karma and you see other people in where they are at, you're almost like... they're there. It's going to be okay. It's which is why compassion is such an important element, right? Because you don't want to condescend or patronize people. It's just like, oh, that's where you're at. It's going to be okay. I promise. Just go through your karmic undoing process and walk through hell. It's going to be, this way you're just aware, but to the point where you almost, even if that person wants to engage with you, you do not because you don't want to blow them energetically. You don't want to, sorry, that sounds really stupid. Because their field cannot possibly match theirs. You don't really want to burn them because you could. That field, that energy can sort of burn them a little bit. So you're just going to be like, let's be over here.
Okay.
Yeah. And you don't want to overwhelm. And, because we haven't experienced anything like it in any human lifetime, it's going to feel like we're sliding through things. You're barely kind of touching or catching anything as you just go along.
Once we move through that, are we officially on the bliss path? Not just the getting ready for it, but we're there. We're in bliss.
Completely. Totally. I mean, you're officially on that bliss path. How we talked about, before you get to the door, you're on the path to bliss. As in, I'm moving through my fate, but I know I'm not stopping. That I call the path to bliss because there's no other word for it, because it's not happiness, because you still have a destination in mind. You're contracted for it. You're going for it. Once you're through the door, you still have forward momentum and movement. So you are effectively on that bliss path. Does that make sense?
You're just on the other side of the door, and now it's kind of like...
You've arrived, you've moved through, you crossed the
Because you
threshold.
could stop before, but
Yes.
it doesn't mean that once you go through, it's just there's no turning back.
Precisely.
Which for a commitment phobe like me freaks me out, but fine.
I know. And it's totally fair, which is why I'm like, when you're ready, you do it.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
before. Not a minute before, not a second before.
Yeah.
You have to be completely ready. Because once you do, and I think I was saying this before we were recording, there's no going back. So you cannot go back into your fate tapestry, into the written part, and pull something. It has to already be with you. So you have to have activated completely and fully 100% that fate line. So if there's some lingering thing about your purpose that you need to go explore and get into, you're definitely not crossing this threshold. Because that fate line has to be fully activated. With our fate tapestry, right, we're kind of like traversing and playing with our fate lines, you know, like, oh, let me take a turn here and explore this. The bliss path is a singular path. It's not necessarily a straight one. It plays with the patterns and braiding depending on what we're most desiring in the moment, which in human time is approximately 5 hours from that moment.
As in 5 hours in advance?
Yes.
Okay.
So by the time we're on the bliss path, all those fate lines that we're bringing with us, the core relationships, you know, I'm the divine, et cetera, and our purpose, we've woven them together to bring them on this single path. So we're not jumping lines. We're not like, oh, let me go over here. Let me go over there. We are firmly in our one path. In the unwritten parts of our fate, we have that momentum that's created from our divine power, and our divine will pretty much steers the ship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So to reach a particular destination or desired moment, you're not in like when you're in your destiny and you have the goalposts and goals, because there's no end point in this part of our, you know, this part of our lives. We have to express it to will it to be. So in the very beginning of this experience, this has to be within the bounds of what we can create, which is limited by our lack of experience. So this is why we have to have sound purpose, since it gives us a strong line to work with.
And I guess
Like,
also
yeah.
otherwise, like, we're only basing it on our imaginations, and that's not enough.
No, it's not. Not in this world where physical reality, like matter really matters. If that, you know, it gives weight to our experience in our lives. So all the movement that we make in this unwritten portion, it's just an extension of our will and utilizes everything in our arsenal to pull all those lines together to create the most expanded experiences possible from a single space. Hence prosperity. Remember how in the previous experience, previous episode, we talked about how our experiences have to have a certain amount of depth. So we're not jumping lines. We're milking everything we have. So the books that we created, those are prosperous because there's more than one purpose for them. They can be utilized in various ways. They contain information and are coded in such a way that they will be useful for a really long time. So they're not just like, oh, I pick up and put down and donate because I'm done.
You can literally pick it up and ask
way.
a question and get an answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, by the way, was just like such a cool revelation to discover.
Yeah. I know, seriously, it's not like we planned that. That's pretty much like the unwritten title of my life is I didn't plan this. Did I?
Yeah.
Question mark.
Question mark.
But did I?
But is this not the same as magic? Because that's also an extension of our desires.
Yeah, right. But those desires are kind of meant to feed and expand our joy. That's really what those desires, that's how those function in magic. But the desires within bliss are twofold. They enable us to experience our greatest power, and they have the capacity to reshape our world in the process.
Which is why that whole serve thing becomes more important.
Yeah, which is why purpose is so fucking important.
Because you're bringing in a new world.
Yeah. When we're creating within bliss, it will bring about three things. The first is divine clarity. So that's the capacity to see all, and as a result, where we stand in it. Mm-hmm. The second has to do with divine knowing, and that's the capacity to anticipate exactly where we need to be, when we need to be, and what to do when we arrive. And the third has to do with divine feeling. And this I find really interesting. It's the heightened sensations that make us realize what it means to be fully alive. Do you remember how we kind of talked about like the feeling of something? Like you almost know it because you feel it.
Yeah.
And then they said at this point, even on the path to bliss, so before you're in the state, but you're moving toward it, and even in happiness, it's less about the feeling of something. Well, happiness can be about the feeling as well. But when you're moving out of that and into something else, that heightened sensation is effectively a resonance. And that's really important that we understand that nuanced distinction, because we're really not about our emotions. We're very capable. I cry, like, it's not like I don't feel things. But I'm operating so much more from this other awareness and sensation and resonance, because my experience of things is so much broader now.
But can you experience those three things before you get to bliss?
In small ways, of course, because, do you remember how, I think you said it once, and I can't remember how or when, but at some point, we never go from separation and overnight to oneness. Just like our lives never change overnight. We might have a realization while we sleep and wake up and have some clarity around something. But nothing changes overnight, because we're not wired for such sudden changes and shifts. Otherwise, we'd explode, right? Our survival mechanisms that are coded within our beings require us to have like little experiences, so all of our traumas like don't shatter us in one go. So as things get better and better and better, we adjust. As you said, experience makes normal. So it's never really overnight that lives change. It's over time. Time being the space we experience within our hearts, and the shifts happen there.
Well, also because I remember we had an episode in season 10 where we discussed how a soul can experience an eternity in a blink of an instant.
Yeah.
It could take years or it could take 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But then wondering that, how long do we spend in this part of bliss?
A good portion of our lives, because it's going to take some time for us to find our feet with it. I mean, it could be as little as 2 years, and for others, it could be up to 15 years, depending on their evolution and how old they are when it begins.
This episode is brought to you by Karma Magic Bliss. For more information, resources, and links to our books, check out our website, karmamagicbliss.com, and Karma Magic Bliss across all